This is Betsy Jensen, and you are listening to Unstoppable Body and Mind, episode 126, Healing Years of Pain and Symptoms with Kristina, Stacey, and Callie.
In this podcast, we learn to upgrade our brain and understand the power of our thoughts, to heal and to create the results we want in our life. Become the person in control of your healing and make peace with your life. Become unstoppable, body and mind.
Excited today. Have some friends here. These ladies are moderators with me in a Facebook group all about healing chronic pain. Basically, it's Alan Gordon's group from The Way Out, that book, The Way Out by Alan Gordon, and his podcast, Tell Me About Your Pain. So if you ever want to look up that group, there's like 15,000 members, right? And it's a great support where we all will answer questions and help you out with navigating this. And so what originally sparked the idea for this podcast and inviting these ladies, and there's going to be a part two as well with a couple others. If you know much about this world, there are some pretty clear-cut things that are considered neuroplastic, most chronic pains, things like IBS, fibromyalgia. And then there's this gray area of other stuff, including autoimmune, which just even since I've been studying this the last few years, Dr. Schubiner has started saying more about how, yes, it's usually related to some tissue damage when there's autoimmune, but we also know the brain controls the nervous system and the immune system. So our thoughts can, to some degree, affect autoimmune. And personally, that's of so much interest to me because my original diagnosis was ulcerative colitis, which is autoimmune. And I happened to find Dr. Sarno's book where he says ulcerative colitis is mind-body. So I just was operating under that assumption, this is something I can fix. This is great news. And my ulcerative colitis is now resolved. And I know that there were some people in the group when I asked that had some autoimmune issues and have them resolved. And does that happen to be any of the three of you right now tonight?
Yeah, me.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So we have Kristina and Callie and Stacey here, but maybe since you said that, Kristina, we could start with you, and then we'll just let everyone have a chance to describe what they've gone through and their personal stories and what's helped them the most. So let's start with Kristina with what happened. What's your story? Tell us.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's so exciting to be here. My story is I struggled with anxiety for as long as I can remember, even as a kid, but I was just labeled as a fearful child, right? I was born in 66, so back then anxiety wasn't a thing. Then I developed an eating disorder around age 10. I grew up in Germany, by the way, moved to the United States in my 20s. Around my 20s, I also developed bulimia. First it was anorexia. Then I was going back and forth between bulimia and anorexia till I was about 50. I'm 57 now. And something that was spoken over me repeatedly when I was a child is that I'm not capable. Mm-hmm. That's a longer story. My caretakers weren't mean. It's just generation I grew up in. And my mom projected a lot of fears and self-doubt onto me. And I think that started a lot of the anxiety and emotional struggles, but didn't know how to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And I struggled with depression. And it was in my 30s, I developed physical health issues. First, it was hypothyroidism. I was put on thyroid medication. Then it was adrenal fatigue. I started going to conventional doctors and they didn't really have any answers for me. It was just medication. I was hoping to avoid that. Mm-hmm. So started seeing functional medicine doctors and naturopaths and eventually did end up taking medication. Mm-hmm. But so adrenal fatigue was mentioned. And then over a period of about, I think 14 years, I accumulated maybe 15 diagnoses or more. Some of the typical things we see like postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, leaky gut, histamine intolerance, then there was insomnia, the adrenal fatigue progressed to adrenal insufficiency. I was put on hydrocortisone. Hashimoto's was the autoimmune disorder I was diagnosed with. And just a host of other
Yeah.
diagnoses. And I just kept going to doctors, changing my diet.
Yeah.
Was down to like 10 foods and
Yeah.
treatments and supplements. And at the end of those 14 years, I was on 5 medications, roughly, and about 35 supplements. And I was practically bedridden, right? I was in constant
Mm,
pain,
yeah.
anxiety. I just didn't want to go on living. I mean, I wasn't suicidal, but
Yeah.
I was just kind of existing throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I'm also a Christian, and I'd been taught that God doesn't always heal, that he's mysterious. And it just fed into this, negative image I had of myself. Like, why wouldn't you want to heal me? Right. It was just, it
Wow.
just never made sense to me.
Yeah.
But because I had all these self-doubts and self-worth issues, I never questioned it. But at the end of those 14 years, being at the end of my rope, basically, I did start questioning, well, why wouldn't he want to heal me? And why is my body supposedly so broken, right? All these doctors I'd seen for
Hmm.
14 years, they never gave me a reason why my entire body was failing me.
Yeah.
And so first I started learning about different biblical healing principles that made a lot more sense, that God does want us well, that he is the healer. That was really important to me. Then I found a brain retraining program that was really helpful, lots of visualization in that one. And
Mm-hmm.
they taught about the limbic system and the involvement with the mind body connection. And then I read The Great Pain Deception, which
Hmm.
had a list of mind body syndrome doctors in the back. And one of those doctors was Howard Schubiner, who
Ah,
happened to be practicing 3 hours from where I live. So I ended up
wow.
seeing him, saw
Yeah.
him in person. He diagnosed me with mind body syndrome. And
Yeah.
yeah, now I am off all medications. I'm down to like 3 supplements, but I take them as supplements, not to fix a symptom, right? So it's very
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
I eat whatever I want. I sleep great. I have tons
Oh,
of energy. I help others now in this field. And it's just, this work is just incredible. So for
yeah.
me, it was the education, applying the tools, whether it's somatic tracking, visualization, but just understanding that, yes, the symptoms are real. I'm not imagining them, but they are very much created by the brain. And I just kept showing up, doing the work, overcoming the fear, overcoming the doubt. And that's what led me to where I'm at now. And it's just, yeah, it's incredible. As you all know, it's amazing when you get a hold of this work and start changing your life. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what a great
Yeah.
story. Were there times that you questioned some of those diagnoses as not being mind body? Like how, like specifically the Hashimoto's, when you went to
Mhm.
Dr. Schubiner, did he say you have mind body and some autoimmune, or how did that, or was it gone by then, or what was going on?
So by the time I saw Dr. Schubiner, I had gotten off the thyroid medication and I had gotten retested. So I was on thyroid medication for 20 years. Sorry, kind of
Wow.
backing up. And I'd gotten off of it
Wow.
and had gotten retested 6 months later, and all my thyroid tests came back normal. So I
Wow.
never brought up the Hashimoto's with him,
Yeah.
but I still was struggling with things. And when I saw him, he said, "There's nothing wrong with you." And I was
Mm.
so excited.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then, the next day, all the doubt came back because
Yeah.
Yeah.
14
Yeah.
years, right? Doctors are telling you this is what's wrong with you. So, yeah, I definitely had doubt. The adrenal fatigue was one that was really hard for me to overcome.
Mhm.
The food intolerance stuff was easier for me. I think we all have different areas, right, that are harder,
Yeah.
seem maybe there's more fear
Yeah.
around it. So, yes,
Yeah.
definitely fought some doubt on some of those diagnoses. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
so mainly your story is like mine, a lot of like regulating the nervous system in different
Mhm.
ways through education and through
Mhm.
some practices probably as well. Like it sounds like you were doing that limbic training and visualization and things like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
so your like autoimmune specifically was, yeah, related to the nervous system
I think so.
regulation
Mm.
and went away and hasn't come back, and it's not a lifelong thing and it hasn't progressed. And Yeah.
Right. No, I've got no problems that I can speak of, no
Yeah.
symptoms. I feel great. And it was just like a byproduct, the Hashimoto's. That was not something I addressed. It's just
Mm-hmm.
my thyroid, tests all came back normal, and I've just felt really good since then. So it was 2016 I stopped the thyroid medication. So it's been a while since I've been off of it. And yeah,
Amazing.
I did somatic tracking. I did visualization for a while. I've done different things at different times, just depending on the need and what resonated with me and what worked for me at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because it's a journey, and sometimes you find things that really work, and then you find other
Yeah.
things that are fun,
Right.
and you tried those, and that's, yeah,
Mhm.
it's just a
Yeah.
journey. So for you, it sounds like that turning point was really just getting to this point of you were doing everything everyone said, and
Hmm.
you were feeling worse, and you weren't getting better, and
Right.
then starting to
Yeah.
just really question and even turn to your faith that
Hmm.
brought you a lot of peace and probably calmed your nervous system too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My
Mhm.
faith was really important for me. I think it is, depending on what people's faith is, it's important for them. And also addressing those beliefs I had about myself, that I'm not capable, I'm not good enough, everybody is smarter, right?
Yeah.
All those lies I was believing about myself, I think those were really taxing on the nervous system.
Yeah.
And you just show up in the world with the social anxiety, of course you're going to feel miserable. So
Yeah.
addressing all
Mhm.
of that as well at some point was important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. For me,
Mhm.
one of the biggest things was just how harsh I was on myself. I was my biggest
Yeah.
Mhm.
critic, and I was
Yeah.
always in this state of not good enough, and what are
Hmm.
people thinking about me? And so
Yeah.
just I just felt like I was always being chased by a tiger and probably physiologically
Yeah.
responding like that when it was just my own thoughts and my own
Hmm.
beliefs from years and years of programming. So,
Mhm.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happened with me. And yeah, it took effort and time, but it's so worth it, right? To put in that effort. Yeah.
Yeah.
When
And
you
it's
get to
like,
the other side. Yeah.
yeah. And it's like a lifestyle change. It's not like, oh, I'll
Mhm.
just hurry up and process these emotions and process those traumas. It's like, I want to be the kind of person that has boundaries, and I stick up for myself, and I
Yeah.
don't put myself last, and I'm no longer
Mhm.
dissatisfied with myself no matter what's going on. And right, like
Right.
I wanted those changes in my life. In fact, I was doing, just some general life coaching before that, just getting coached
Mhm.
and really loving coaching podcasts and that self-development even before that. And so for me, it was just a bonus that that happened to heal all the health things too, because I
Right. Yeah.
wanted to be someone who was, not always worrying about what people thought and in stress all the
Hmm.
time because of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Life is easier when you don't worry about what everybody thinks about you, right?
Yeah, like I just think we don't realize how taxing that is to our bodies,
Hmm.
Yeah.
our thought patterns and our beliefs and
Hmm.
our attitudes towards ourselves, and
Yeah.
not that we're choosing it, not that we want to think those things about ourselves, but it's just unexamined beliefs for years and years
Yeah.
probably. So,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
okay. Okay, very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Of course.
What a great story, even though it was like a long journey, like to hear all that you've overcome,
Hmm.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Okay, let's go to Stacy next. Is that all right,
Yeah,
Stacy?
sure. Hey,
Impatiently.
everybody. Yeah, I'm Stacey Dick. Um, Gosh, I feel like we all have similar stories and we have things that are so different, right? So it's like people can relate, and then there's little different tidbits, which I think is special in sharing what we went through. So my symptoms, sickness, illness appeared, what I say, out of the blue, like literally overnight. I was fine one day, working out. And the next morning I woke up, and from then on for 18 years, it felt like I had the flu like every day. Um, and so about 4 months after I got sick, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and
I guess I was somewhat lucky to receive that diagnosis so soon in. Some people search and they're like, what's wrong? But at the same time, I always knew whatever labels and diagnoses I was given, like I never believed it. I knew there was a reason for the illness, even though doctors couldn't seem to put a finger on it, right? I don't know
Mhm.
if any of you felt that way, but it was just like something inside of me was not willing to accept.
Mhm.
Well, this is just what I'm stuck with. No, that cannot be. I was healthy for 30 years. What do you mean all of a sudden I just have to live with this?
Yeah.
So I was sick for about 17 to 18 years. Irritable bowel syndrome, Lyme disease were the labels.
Really, Lyme
Gosh, and
disease too.
insomnia, pain in like every part of my body. If I listed it all, it would be too much. And I also had really severe sitting pain and pelvic pain. I know some people can relate to that unfortunate symptom. Um,
Yeah.
and I easily saw over 100 doctors, including going to the Mayo Clinic. And that's like the things you have to do to get into there. It's not an easy thing. You don't just call and be like, I'm coming over. No, it's like a whole process to get in.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure people can relate to spending tens of thousands of dollars that we put that money elsewhere, could have gone to a house, a car, we talk about that often, where that money could have gone. But between supplements and special diets, like Kristina mentioned, I was told by so many specialists, well, if you do this diet and avoid these foods, you're going to get better. And me being the good student, well, yes, I'll do the diet. I'll give up everything that's yummy and tasty and make myself miserable and get even skinnier and lose more weight and be more miserable. And none of that helped,
Yeah.
right?
And
I'm
it didn't
sure.
help. In your case,
No.
right? You did all the things, you spent all the
Yeah.
money, you did all the treatments, and it was just getting worse, not better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I'm giving up my favorite foods and I'm feeling worse. Like this is not
Yeah.
going in the
Yeah.
right direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
Even one of the treatments that I did was out of state, and I moved away from my husband and my dogs at the time to go live in another place and do special treatments of daily enemas and colonics, and not to mention all the supplements and pay for an apartment and utilities out of state,
My God.
only, to get rid of the offending
Hmm.
things that were causing me to be sick, only to come back home much, much poorer and in the same or worse condition.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of part of the, chasing doctors and chasing treatments and hope. So I stumbled upon this work. I think it was a Facebook ad, just scrolling through Facebook and saw something about Curable and, signed up for the app and Curable groups. What's that? Well, it's expensive, but why not? Like, I've thrown so much money at trying to get better already.
Hmm.
And so Curable was kind of like my launching pad to find out about everything mind body. So I
Yeah.
did their 12-week program and then I just immersed myself like in everything mind body I could find from um, Nicole Sachs and Dr. Sarno, and had a call with Steve Ozanich and
Wow.
listened to Dr. Hanscom and Alan Gordon, all the people, just trying to soak in like all the information
Yeah.
and apply all the things they said, right? And like Kristina, doing those things like consistently, I didn't see changes a month in, it's 2 months in, 3 months in. For me, it was like maybe 6, 9 months where I was doing this work and just so, so many people had success. I thought, I'm not different. If
Yeah.
other people healed from chronic fatigue and these crazy labels and conditions, so could I.
Yeah.
So it was just sticking with it, right? That
Yeah.
consistency.
I'm
So,
curious about that. Do you have any theories of why it takes some people longer than others, or in your case specifically?
I've thought about that and I wonder if it's like the level of fear. I
Yeah.
wonder how much our limiting beliefs play into, maybe there was a subconscious belief for me, like I've been sick for XYZ, then maybe I can't get better really fast.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
maybe it'll take a while for me to regain my health. So yeah, I've thought about that too.
Yeah.
Where some people seem to grab it quicker and have a quicker shift.
Yeah. And some people,
Yeah,
it's really like frustrating for people to just hear the stories about, oh, this, took me 2 months. Oh, this took me 6 months and
yeah,
never had pain again. And there are some people that they didn't even start to see a change for 6 months.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to start to touch on next. But first, I wanted to point out, like Kristina, my Christian faith was super important. And so God was just showing me that it was a blend of neuroscience along with what the Bible said, that together for me was the magic, not potion, but you know what I mean? That's what it meant for me to get better, to put those two together.
Mhm.
And he was showing me that that was my way forward, not only in healing, but in eventually helping others.
Yeah.
Um, but I started seeing little bits of improvement, like I would get little glimpses
Mhm.
where, if when I could uh, drag myself to get together and go out and maybe visit with friends for a couple of hours, and find I'm laughing and oh my goodness, I haven't thought of a symptom in like an hour. Like what's,
Uh-huh.
and then that just started happening a little bit more. And I started just pushing the envelope. And I think it's about challenging our brain's perceived limitations, because we have to realize that they're not always real, that
Yeah.
our brain thinks they are. I'm not saying symptoms aren't real, they are 100%, but that our brain is presenting them in a way that we can't do certain things. So
Yeah.
gently but firmly pushing against that and challenging that over and over, whether it was a little bit of yard work, a little bit of trying to work out when I could barely walk and bend,
Mhm.
and just a little bit here and there started to show more glimpses of that improvement. Yeah. And I was like, I'm on to something here.
How long would you say overall then it took you to become chronic pain free or chronic symptom free?
I would say I feel like the predominant symptoms left kind of at different times, but very gradually, if that makes sense. I think the fatigue, I started to see improvement. It still took a while. It still took probably a year before I felt like I was making a dent
Really?
in the energy levels. Yeah, I was starting to see glimpses of improvement, but then it was even longer after the fatigue started to go, that the severe sitting pain, that took longer.
Oh,
Why, I'm not sure.
yeah.
Maybe it scared me more, but I don't know. The fatigue I felt like was really scary because it felt like I would never overcome it sometimes.
Um,
Um,
wow.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And
anyone
then
who's
I had other
listening
things.
that, is getting frustrated after just a few months, and this is not to scare anyone either, but also just and it's
Mhm.
not like you probably were counting the days. Like it's just this
Right.
little gradual process, and you look over and then you're like, okay, it
Yeah.
did take a year. It did take a good couple years, but
Hmm.
also it developed over several years or several
Right.
decades. And so it is nice to
Right.
have that uh less of the urgency and more patience with it when you can.
Mhm.
Yeah. And one thing, and I can share a couple of things that I feel like really helped me the most, but
Please. Oh,
one thing along the way that helped was keeping that evidence journal that people probably hear all the time. Because I would write down little things like, oh, I could sit for 5 minutes today. And then
yes.
when I flip back in my evidence journal, which sometimes I still write down really big things. I don't write in it every day or even maybe every month, but it's something like phenomenal. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. But looking back 4 years ago, where I started and seeing, oh, I could barely, like, I couldn't even do a squat. I could only walk, a couple houses down and back. And
Wow.
then seeing the progress you make is such amazing evidence to your brain and
Yeah.
encouragement when you go
Yes.
back and reread it along the way. So
Yeah.
that's a major tool for sure.
And I think it's just so good because it trains your brain to look for it too. Just the fact
Hmm.
that you have that journal and you're thinking of what you might write in it next, then instead
Yeah.
of just noticing what we do on our default, which is when it hurts and how bad it hurts and how bad we wanted it to stop, you were starting to actually train our brain, just like they do with gratitude journals, right?
Yeah.
A study where you
Mhm.
list 3 things you're grateful for, and at the end of the month, they had, I think they even had health changes, but they definitely had a change in their well-being. And I
Mm,
think even their brain structure, I'm not probably not quoting it, it's just off the cuff.
I think so.
Exactly. But I think there were, all of these measurable changes as well as them just feeling better.
Hmm.
And they started just looking throughout the day for things that they could write. And that
Yeah.
shifts that whole mindset.
Yeah.
Love that.
And that's like the reticular activating system, right? Like what are
Yeah.
we looking out for? Are we looking out and obsessing on symptoms? Or are
Yeah.
we looking specifically for the little improvements and being a detective
Yes.
of, oh yeah, well, there's some progress, there's some success. How can I write that down and encourage myself? Um,
Yes.
Other thing I wanted to point out was another big tool for me was just like graded exposure and incremental training. I know that comes up a lot in the community, but for myself, I've been a personal trainer for 15 years, and having the knowledge of what to do and how to move correctly, but being in so much pain and fear that it totally hijacked my knowledge. It didn't matter what I knew
Mhm.
because there was so much fear of moving and hurting that I felt like I had to start at square one, like just barely doing anything.
Mhm.
And using incremental training and graded exposure and messages of safety to go from like stretching barely on the bed for 5 minutes to fully back to full activity. Now, granted, it took me a couple years
Yeah.
to get back to where I wanted, but
Mhm.
I think it's just so important to go at our own pace, go
Yes.
slow enough that helps us feel safe,
Yes.
and just keep that visualization, keep the image of what you want ahead of you, and
Yeah.
just keep going, right? It's about consistency with our tools.
Yes. Did you do the actual like visualizations to start the graded exposure? It's not just
Mhm.
like I started walking 1 minute and then I walked 2 minutes and then three, but
Yeah.
did you actually do the visualization part as well?
I did, and I did probably one or two visualizations a day, would just set my phone timer. And because I was a personal trainer and wanted so badly to get back to fitness and just activity in general, I spent a lot of my visualization time thinking, imagining things that I couldn't do that I used to be able to do, jump squats, burpees, things that felt crazy to me at the time because I was like, okay, I can barely move and walk.
Yeah.
But setting my mind on that, fixing my mind on where I wanted to go and doing it consistently
Yeah.
is, I think, a lot of what helped encourage my brain to actually get there eventually.
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love the studies about visualization and how powerful
Hmm.
it is. And we know people in the Olympics have been doing it for
Yeah.
decades, right?
Yeah.
Since the 80s, I think. I mean, sports psychologists, like we know how powerful that is. And just more testament to how powerful the brain is in controlling our
Hmm.
bodies and that feeling of safety. I love the
Yeah.
visualization because you can do all of those things in your mind, imaginary, and you're not going to risk getting hurt. So
Right.
it's a
Right.
great place to start, but often
Yeah.
overlooked. People go right into the activity and kind of forget about that super
Yeah.
powerful part of it.
Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
thanks.
And I wanted to share one more tidbit for
Oh, good.
people that might help that are maybe feeling stuck. I feel like, we talk about not talking about symptoms, and that's super hard. And it's also super helpful and effective. And beyond that, in my own journey, I found that looking to a goal outside myself and outside of just feeling better, because everyone wants to feel better, right? I mean, that's all we want when we don't feel
Yeah.
good. But I eventually enrolled in school to get mind body practitioner, holistic life coach. And I found that was such a massive piece of my recovery because I was looking elsewhere, I was looking at a bigger goal than myself.
Yes.
So I just wanted to share that with people, like start thinking about bigger goals
Yes.
and
Yeah.
what you want to get to and achieve.
Right. Instead of thinking like, okay, I'll work on all this self-healing and then I'll go get the
Yeah.
education. You're like, that's actually part of the self-healing, is not
Yeah.
focusing so much on the self-healing all the time and
Mhm.
actually getting yourself focused on something else that's
Yeah.
exciting and appealing and you want to do. And that naturally takes away from some of that focus and
Yeah.
fear that your brain has when you're, because some of us tend to be a little perfectionistic when we do this work and we want to be
Just
the
a
best
little.
healers and we want to just do it all the time. And there is that phase we all go through where we're just absorbing all the information and we just can't get enough. But when we focus on
Yeah.
it too much, that's also can slow us down. So yeah, I
Yeah.
love that point.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, Callie, let's go to you. You've been patiently
Huh.
waiting. Do you
Oh,
want to tell
no.
us more about your story, please?
Sure. I'm Callie Kuntz, and I have the privilege of working with these three ladies, and it's just delightful. Um, so I have a lot of overlap actually with both Kristina and Stacey. So our stories are going to sound quite similar, I think.
Mm.
So I, like Kristina, was a very sensitive child and very fearful all the time, afraid of everything.
Mhm.
And so had a lot of anxiety. I was a nail biter, and to the point that it was noticeable that people would actually comment, that I was always had my hands in my mouth. I started getting more anxiety in my teenage years, and uh, I had insomnia. I had social anxiety. I started fainting at the drop of a hat, just really bizarre, strange symptoms. And that lasted on and off through college. And then, I got married and settled down and had some kids, and things seemed to be going quite well. And my life seemed to be pretty normal. And then one day I was out on a lake riding in a boat and um, got back to the shore, and I couldn't move my head. My neck, it just, the pain was just intense. And
Mm.
it felt like somebody was drilling holes through my ears.
Oh.
And it was awful. And I happened to be visiting my parents in Texas. And so I was able to get in right away to see a pain doctor. And he, did what pain doctors do. He did a procedure. I got my first cervical epidural,
Mhm.
and the pain went away and I was fine. I was able to make the drive back home to Minneapolis. However, the pain came back because that's what happens.
Mhm.
And I kept getting this very intense ear, neck pain. And then I went and had an x-ray. And on the x-ray, it was discovered that I have a congenital fusion at C5-6 and some very creative wiring in my neck. And
Mm.
so of course, the radiologist and the doctors were just about it and were
Mhm.
very overreactive.
Mhm.
And by that time, we'd moved to the East Coast, and I was enrolled in a pain program at the University of Virginia, where I received cervical epidurals every 6 months, like clockwork, and was told that I could no longer practice yoga. I could no longer do anything that might do anything to my neck because I would be paralyzed if I hurt my neck.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
So I mean, it was like
Jeez.
this catastrophic, horrible thing. It's all of a
Mm.
sudden I got this what I call medical traumatization, where
Yeah.
I was just told that if I did anything at all to hurt my neck, that I could be my quality of life would be over. My life, yeah, as I knew it would be kaput. So of course, then I started having pain that spread. It went down my left side of my body. So I only had pain on the left side, not the right, which later became evidence that it's neuroplastic, right?
Ah,
So I had, but I lost all my sensation in my left hand.
Mm.
Started
whoa.
having aches and pains in my left arm and shoulder. It traveled down into my hip, to my knee, to my ankle. I started spraining my ankle all the time. I dislocated my left knee and had to have that repaired. All of a sudden, my ligaments were holding me in place, and my left shoulder would pop in and out of joint. My left hip would, it was just freaky and weird, and it was scary.
Yeah.
Uh, I started off with the diagnosis of myofascial pain syndrome.
Mm.
And then one day I just happened to notice that fibromyalgia popped up on my chart. I'm not sure when, but
Mm,
eventually that's the diagnosis that they put on there because it's often the diagnosis when there's unexplained symptoms. I
yeah.
also had migraine headaches for a period of about 4 years, and then they just went away.
Wow.
Um, I
Mhm.
had, let's see, what are some of the other symptoms? Chronic fatigue, which
Mm,
often goes along with this. Unexplained rashes would show up out of nowhere and then go away.
yeah.
Acne, just bizarre symptoms and strange things would happen. And so I lived like that. So this was probably 1996.
Hmm.
So I was in my mid 30s when this started to happen and just did the doctor shopping, tried everything, including things I'm totally embarrassed to even admit.
Oh,
Um, you know,
now you have to tell
anything.
us. No, just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll tell you in private some of the
Oh,
things I'm embarrassed about. But I did a lot of things. Well, I'll tell you one thing I did. So I had one doctor told me it was electromagnetic frequency that was causing my pain. So
Uh-huh.
I had somebody come to my house, and again, thousands of dollars, Stacy, I can totally relate. This man comes to my house and he drives a rod in one side and another, so the Earth's magnetic field would go over my house.
oh my
And then
gosh.
I actually had
Uh-huh.
somebody come in and check for dirty electricity
Yeah.
and fix all the outlets in my house. So there was no
Mhm.
dirty electricity. I got rid of my Wi-Fi and
Oh,
went back
wow.
to Ethernet because, yeah,
Yeah.
no. So that was just one of
Yeah.
many embarrassing things I've done over the years to try to get rid of pain. And
Mhm.
so I couldn't also have, like Stacy, I could not sit. I lost my ability to sit in a chair. So I was a teacher. I was a high school teacher. And if you can't sit, that's a real problem because you have to sit to work a lot of the times. And
Mhm.
it got to the point where I was, after my students would leave, I'd actually partially undress because I couldn't stand the sensation of clothes
Oh,
on my body, which is a
yeah.
very common fibromyalgia symptom when people all of a sudden you just
Mhm.
can't stand to be touched. So I turn off the lights, I'd lock my door and take off as many clothes as I could get away with being in my classroom where somebody
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
come in and see me. And I would lay on my stomach. So my students had tables in my
Mhm.
classroom, and I would lay on the tables on my stomach and type
Mhm.
on my laptop and grade papers because I couldn't sit.
Wow.
And I got to a point where I can't do this anymore. I just can't. And so I took a medical leave of absence. And the first thing I did is like Stacy, I moved out of state. I
Mhm.
actually moved to Texas
Mm,
and went into inpatient rehabilitation
mm,
for 10 weeks and cashed in retirement savings to do that. It was good in many ways because the place where I went actually had a lot of success working with people with chronic symptoms. Um, and they actually were really intelligent about their pain education. So I went from 8 to 4 every day, Monday through
wow.
Friday.
Was it more
Um,
of a mind-body approach, this one?
it was it was functional medicine more, but
Oh,
they had, so my doctor was a retired orthopedic surgeon.
mhm,
So he knew the body. They had a CBT
mhm.
therapist there who did CBT with us.
That's
They
cognitive
also,
behavioral therapy, if anyone's
yes,
wondering.
and they also had a guy there named Randy who had a big blue chair, and he would hook you up to these little electrode things, and he would have you regulate your breathing to your heart rate, and
Oh,
it would take your pain away like nothing. I mean, he was really good at nervous system regulation.
yeah.
And he was the one that introduced me to some terms about neural circuit pain, some things like that. And they also, as part of every day, we had a lecture about chronic pain. And one of the first lectures I attended was about how your brain makes pain. And I was like, oh,
God.
no, my brain's been doing this to me this whole time. This is so cruel to tell me this.
Yeah.
But we actually had accurate pain education, which a lot of times when you go to medical doctors, you don't get accurate, up-to-date
Mm.
pain
Ah,
education. It's
was
very
this pretty
biomedical.
recent?
And
Yeah, this is
yeah, this was in summer of 2019. So I
okay.
don't recommend Dallas in the summer. It's
Uh,
really hot, but it was really effective, at least getting my strength back, because by that time I was very weak. I was in my,
Mm.
so I come home from work, I would hit the medicine cabinet. And I don't like saying that, but I did. I would come home. I was prescribed two different opioid medications, along with gabapentin and a bunch of others. So I was on an SSRI, I was on Cymbalta. So I was on this huge bunch of really harsh, hard medicine. But anyway, I come home, hit the medicine cabinet. I would get in the bathtub. I would soak for an hour. I'd get up, I'd cook dinner for my family, put on my pajamas and go to bed and get up and do the same thing over the next day and the next day
Mm.
and the next day. And that was pretty much my life. I was either at work or in my bed or in the bathtub, because the bathtub was one place where I felt ease from the pain.
Mm.
And so it was a challenge to go someplace where they were going to make me work really, really hard.
Yeah.
But they did. So I worked with it. I did 2 hours of PT, 2 hours of OT every day.
Wow.
Mm.
And, but they fed us really nutritious food, gave us lots of education, did cardio with me for the first time in like forever. So it was really good. So I was there for 10 weeks,
Wow.
and then I came home. And while I was gone, my husband had found Dr. Schubiner.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so my husband was working for United Healthcare in research and development at the time, and he happened to have a break in his schedule. Normally, he did type 2 diabetes research, but he had a break, and he said, I'm going to go find some pain people for my wife.
Oh,
Mm.
And he
nice.
did, and he
Yeah.
did. And so when I got home, um, I signed up for Curable, and I uh, talked to Dr. Schubiner on the phone, and then later was able to meet him in person. But at first we worked on the phone, and wow, it was mind blowing. It actually took me though almost 6 months to accept the fact that this was brain generated.
Mm.
Mm.
It was really hard for me to think that it
Mm.
was something that was happening in my brain. I was really in denial about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
but I started doing Dr. Schubiner's program and started to feel better pretty quickly. But then I stalled at about 60% better.
Mm-hmm.
And there was gosh, what parts do I want to talk about? What parts do I want to skip? So there was an opportunity for me to do patient support for for an implementation study at Southwest Medical in Las Vegas. And my husband, during this time that he's been doing all this research and stuff, has put together a team and has convinced United Health that they want to explore to see if they can use mind body treatments in a normal pain clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Will it work? And so they brought in 3 therapists from Pain Psychology Center, and made some changes in how the pain clinic worked. And they decided they wanted somebody to support patients during their healing, and asked me if I would be willing to do that. So I said, sure. And so I got to go to Las Vegas, and that's where I met Dr. Schubiner and started working in this, what they call brain first approach. So I was part of that implementation trial, and my job was to support the patients going in that trial because the therapist couldn't be on call 24/7. So we formed a Facebook group and did support stuff. So that's kind of how I got started doing this work. At that point, I realized I needed more education. And I started working with a mind body therapist from the Pain Psychology Center. And she helped me get better up. I would say, I hate to say I'm 100% better because, man, I still have flare-ups. I have flare-ups all the time, and they come and they go. I go through periods where I have no pain, and then I go through periods where I have pain again, and then no pain. But what I tell the people that I work with is that the periods of pain flares, they're shorter and shorter in duration. They're less severe.
Yeah.
I am less reactive to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so then um, I started working on training myself to become a coach myself, and have been doing that now for about 3 years. So,
Nice.
so yeah, that's my journey. But whenever people ask me, are you 100% recovered? No. How long did it take you to recover? I'm still working on it. I still practice every
Yeah.
day. And what was said earlier about consistency, man, so important. And so yeah, so I still work on it, and still have to learn to deal with my perfectionism, people pleasing, my boundaries, my
Yeah.
lack thereof.
Right.
And all of those are skills that I'm still honing, I'm still working on. So I'm 63 now. And so I figure that the time I spent wandering in the medical wasteland was about 23 years. And yeah, so all of us have that in common, that
Yeah.
it took a long time to find the answers, and it took some time to heal. But yeah,
Would you
so
say sometimes they use the term chronic pain free, just meaning like I'm not having the daily pain, the constant pain, the chronic pain. And so you could say, still we're all, even Dr. Schubner says he still gets mind body issues. We're all as humans, because our minds and bodies are connected, we're going to have things that trigger us, and we'll have a nervous system response and a brain response sometimes. But the chronic pain free, at least, is
right.
another
Oh
way to.
yeah. So I don't have trigger points in my body anymore. I
Yeah.
don't have pain in my hand because my
Okay. Yeah.
fusion's at C5-6. So of course I got this pain, and I
Yeah.
don't have numbness anymore. I don't have my joints don't pop in and out. I haven't sprained
Wow.
my ankle in years. I
Yeah.
actually weight train. I don't, my body, when I look at my body, I'm like, you can't really tell, but actually I lift heavy now.
Yeah.
Where I couldn't even do anything anymore, but for my
Yeah.
age and menopause and just overall health and well-being, I work with a trainer now, and yeah, I do a lot of things that I never did before. And to Stacey's point, when you're recovering, to have things to look forward to and to be working on is so important.
Yeah.
And I kind of made a list of things that I wanted to try when I got better. So I've explored kayaking. I went back to skiing and discovered, yeah, I can still ski. It's
Cool.
not so, it doesn't feel as great as it did when I was in my 20s, but I can still do it. And my body, I was shocked that my body remembered how to shift my weight and move. I was like,
Yeah.
oh.
I met
So
some guys on the ski lift in their 60s, and they said their knees feel better on the days that they ski.
yeah, I would believe that. I believe that. I was
Yeah.
so afraid. I was so afraid that I would hurt myself.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. That's
I
a
was practically wetting my pants all the way up the canyon, but
yeah.
but I did
Anytime
it.
when I'm skiing and I think, oh, I hope I don't fall, that's right when, I tense up and
Yeah.
my ski slips and I do almost fall. So yeah, I think
Yeah, exactly.
fear of hurting
Exactly.
yourself
Yeah.
plays into. how much pain can occur.
But yeah, so I took kayaking lessons, and I started doing I started growing orchids,
Yeah,
so I mean, it's
yeah,
just like
yeah. It doesn't have
you
to.
have to have things.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
if I had tips and tricks that I think are really, really important, first of all, I think that consistency is important, and hope. You have to be hopeful and optimistic.
Mhm.
And I think one of the biggest barriers I see with people I work with is catastrophic thinking and
Mm,
pessimism, and
yeah.
like I'm never
Mhm.
going to get better. And so I really had to work on, what if I do get better? What if I can get better?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then there was always the question of, why me? Why am I suffering so much? And
Yeah.
just facing, well, why not you? And
Yeah.
and you can get better. I
Mhm.
also am a big believer not just in reducing fear, but increasing joy, that you have
Yes.
additive joy. I
Yeah.
use this term with my clients all the time. Go do something every day that makes you happy. Every
Yes.
single day, you have to do something.
Yes.
It's just as important as reducing the fear.
Yes,
Yeah.
I always say that too. I do it with my hands. I'm like, we want to decrease this, we want to decrease the pain, decrease the anxiety. We want to increase the fun and the pleasure and that feeling of safety, right? Because when we're
Mhm.
playing, our nervous
Mhm.
system, we don't have to regulate our nervous system into safety. We know that we're safe when we're playing, right? It's like instead
Right,
of telling your nervous system you're safe, you're showing your
right,
nervous system you're
right.
safe.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly. It's the show and tell. You
Show
can't
and
just
tell.
tell. You have to show it from the bottom up and tell it from the top down. No,
Mhm.
but it reminds me of when I've seen videos of you dancing, Betsy. I can just see the joy on your face and how much fun you're having, and I'm thinking, oh, this is therapy for you. Um,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yes. It's those
yes.
kind of things. And again, it's like we were saying, shifting that mindset, shifting the spotlight,
Yeah.
and focusing on something other than the pain and the healing and the improvement, and just
Hmm. Yeah.
feeling good with what you already like doing. And
Yeah,
love
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Glad you said that.
yeah. So I I feel an incredible amount of gratitude to all the people who supported me in my recovery. And I, you know, I just I think that sometimes we let ourselves really get bogged down in, am I doing it right? Am I crossing the T's and dotting all the I's?
Yeah.
And really, it's more about just changing how you approach living and
Mm.
being and existing and as a human in the space. And I
Yeah.
also want to, another thing that came to mind too was the part about sitting.
Mhm.
I also used graded motor imagery to learn to sit again
Mhm.
and travel again. So one of my greatest joys now is to travel,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
the fact that I can be in a car for longer than 10 minutes
Yeah.
Yeah.
without wanting to just open the door and jump out
Yeah.
is like, what a gift, what an amazing
Yeah.
gift. But yes, I also
Yeah.
use visualization to
Yes.
visualize myself, and then gradual exposure, gently, kindly exposing myself to being in the car. And then one day I was just driving in the car, and it was like I was with my husband and we were driving down the road, and I'm like, I've been here for over an hour and it
Aw.
doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how it happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden you'll be like, wow, I don't hurt right now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
often tell my clients that they'll be surprised when that day they'll be doing their thing and they'll
Yeah.
realize they don't hurt.
Yeah. It's not like a light switch of like it's just
Mhm.
on, and then it goes off,
Yeah.
and we know that moment.
Yeah.
Usually, like I remember one time I used to take all these peppermint pills when my stomach would feel yucky. And
Mhm.
one day I reached for one and I was like, wow, I haven't even had one of these in like 2 weeks. So it wasn't like
Mhm.
I even really noticed, oh, I'm feeling so much better. But all of a
Mhm.
sudden I realized like, oh, I'm using less of that well, herbal medicine than I used to. And that's, yeah, it's I guess
Yeah.
what I'm hearing a lot, and the theme of this could be like, it is a journey. It takes some time. It takes some practice. And instead of looking for, these big quick wins, just being slow and steady and consistent and compassionate with yourself is going to get you so much further.
Right. I just wanted to add to a little bit about medication because I was on a lot of meds, and I think Christina was on a lot of meds as well.
Mm.
Um, that it's okay to use
Yeah.
medication to get yourself to a place
Yes.
you can practice and get better. And
Yeah.
that so it took me 3 years to wean off all the medications I was on.
Yeah.
But it's possible and doable,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
not to get discouraged. We see that in the group a lot too. People
Yeah.
discouraged because they're on medication or they feel
Yeah.
like they're not progressing in that regard. And
Yeah.
man, be nice to yourself, be kind.
Yeah, I think of it as supporting the nervous system. If it
Right.
freaks you out to think of taking away that medication, it's like training wheels. Keep the training wheels on as long as
Mhm.
you need to. And then at some point, you'll feel like my life would be a little better if I didn't have this medication or if I didn't have these training wheels on. And then it feels safe to take them off. But absolutely, that's such a good point. Don't try
Yeah.
to think just because this is mind body, we have to do every single thing with our brain. Our brains are powerful, but also we can support our brains with our nervous system and things that calm it. And sometimes that is medication, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's other soothing strategies that we're using, but it's not like it's all just let me control everything with my thoughts. Just have that whole perspective, compassion for yourself. Um, yeah, good
Yeah.
point. Thank
Yeah.
you. Well, any last thoughts? This already has just been so great, so much information. We've covered so much. If there's, I'll give you one last chance, but this is exactly what I wanted. You guys to tell your stories, a few of your favorite things, what's worked the best for you. What do you think, guys?
Oh gosh, I don't know that I have a favorite. I think it's just trusting the process and consistency over time, not legalism, right? I don't have to, I think Callie may have touched on that. You don't have to do it perfectly every day. Just keep showing up, right?
Yes.
And just do the work, whatever that is for you, and trust that you'll get to where you want to get. And
Yeah.
also agreeing with the medications and supplements. I didn't stop everything at once. It took time. And
Yeah.
I did it when I was ready, when I felt convinced for me that I don't need this anymore. And then
Yeah.
I did it. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
what I often hear that makes me think, what I often hear is like, am I not training the brain right if I
Mhm.
give it this medication, or if I
Yeah.
use this modification, is it if I don't push myself, am I not training the brain right? But basically, if it's
Mhm.
increasing your fear,
Right.
you're not sending the right signals to the brain anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
with what feels better at first and work on that brain training gradually as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
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 I would say that the other thing, and that was a great point, Christina, and Callie, but also for me, one of the huge tools were outcome independence and indifference.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be a dance. I get the question all the time, well, how do you know? Like, what if you do too much? And how do you know where's the line? You don't. That's the whole thing. You don't know where that line is, and that line can move from
Hmm.
day to
Yeah.
day. So what we need to do on our journey is to gently but firmly push against our brain's perceived limitations and showing ourselves, hey, maybe I can go to get together with a friend for an hour. And
Hmm.
you know what? You can try. And if you can't, or you can't make it the whole way, that's okay. But trying and trying as best as possible, and that can be different for different people and different on different days, just to try to live life. And again, what Callie said, how can you bring joy back in?
Yeah.
And living our life and trying to do what we want over and over with consistency, even if you fumble and you get some symptoms over time, you're
Mhm.
going to teach your brain that you're safe.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be perfect when you try it, but you're eventually going to get there over time.
Yes. Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that sometimes we disregard the nuance. And I think that's what we're talking about here is that
Mhm.
every day is a little bit different and everybody's journey looks different, and the outcome independence piece, that either way, I'm going to be okay. If I
Yeah.
have a high pain day, I'm still going to be fine. If
Yeah.
I'm pain free today, it's going to be okay too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because fundamentally we're okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is such an individualized journey. And if
Yeah.
we could just do 1 through 5 and check off all the boxes and do it perfectly and be out of pain, then everyone would do that. But so much
Yeah.
of this is learning not to have those perfectionistic tendencies and this urgency and this fear, and it's our pain can be our greatest teacher. And especially when we learn to have that outcome independence, that's like Jedi level, like mind control. I think it's like to just be like, yeah, I have a symptom and I'm not going to like make that the focus of my day. And
Yeah.
then, you're really on the right track if you can do that.
Mhm.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just quickly at the end here, let's just talk about where people could find you. I'm going to definitely put your links in the show notes as well. But we're actually all coaches here. And Christina and Stacey, you guys work together, right?
We do.
Do you want to tell us just
Yes.
a little bit about that and what your focus is?
Go ahead, Christina, and then I'll tag
Well,
on.
so yeah, I think what Stacey said, using that combination of neuroscience and biblical healing truths, right? We combine the faith with what we're learning from science, and we offer group coaching. That's what we offer together. The website is christianbrainrewire.com. And then we also had a 7-week program that we just finished. That was awesome. It was like weekly meetings and homework and tools. And we'll probably run that again in a few months. We haven't decided yet when we'll do that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll have that resource in the show notes. And then Callie, is there a way, or do you want to talk about how you're coaching right now and what you?
Oh, yeah. So I have my own practice,
Mhm.
and you can also find me at the Pain Psychology Center. So
Mm.
if you want to contact me, my email is coachcalliek@gmail.com. I'm working on building my own coaching business right now, but it's slow and gentle, step at a time. Just taking
Graded
it day by day.
exposure and
But yeah, just
Mhm.
one thing at a time, one
yeah,
obstacle at a time.
yeah.
Um, and then, but I also can be found at the Pain Psychology Center.
Mhm.
So either way works. And if you contact me through the Pain Psychology Center, just say, I saw Callie and I'd like to work with her. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
great. Well, and then we are on that Facebook group too. And as I said, that is a great free resource for people to be on and get community support and get your questions answered. And there's a lot of folks there. So we try to rein it in when it gets a little crazy. But
Yeah, and I
We
also want
try.
to add
yeah.
one thing, Betsy. Since I'm a personal trainer and I help people with fitness, I am resuming a free nervous system and brain regulation class that I am going to resume offering this month.
Ooh,
So
okay.
I can send you the info to add it in there, but it will be every other Friday that, hey, people come, and it'll be 12 p.m. Eastern, just a way to get them calm and relax and realize that movement is okay and is safe and gentle and just another way to relax our nervous system and brain, and another piece of what we do here already. So just wanted to add that.
Mhm. Ooh, exercise is so important. It
Yeah.
gives us endorphins, it decreases pain,
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
perception of pain, and yeah, so and easing back into it is so important for people.
Yeah.
All right, ladies. Well, that was a great time, and thank you so much for joining. And we'll be seeing each other. We'll be in touch.
Thank you
And
so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Betsy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
my pleasure. Take care,
Bye.
everyone.
See ya.
Great week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned a little bit about your brain today that helps you in your life like it helped me. Please be sure and subscribe and leave a review. And of course, be sure and share this podcast with someone you know that wants an unstoppable body and mind.